Check this out, hold on. Zoom in. Yee. 1,000. You guys are 1,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. This is insane. I genuinely never thought we'd get this far this fast. This is absurd. So I guess I want to say thank you. Thanks to each and every one of you for supporting me, supporting my work. It really does mean the world to me. So, okay, so since you guys are either travelers or photographers, today we're going to be talking about travel photography. More specifically, I'm going to be giving you guys a bunch of tips that I use to shoot better travel photos. So here are my top 5 tips to shoot better travel photos. Roll the intro. What's up team, my name is Mark and welcome back to Making Instagram Bangers, the series where I teach you all the tips and tricks that I use to shoot and edit photos. Today, a bit of a different episode. I'm going to be teaching you 5 tricks that are instantly going to improve your photography skills and just a couple of things that you'll be able to play with out on the field and just experiment with these different ways of taking photos and hopefully improve your game. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So tip number 1, use the grid. So what is the grid? The grid are these lines that you're seeing on the screen right now, and this is super important. This is by far the most important tip, the most important thing to do as soon as you get your camera. I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can use it in just a second, but for now you need to turn on the grid. So easiest thing is just to Google the model of your camera space grid. There's bound to be heaps of tutorials on how you can do it. Pretty much all cameras have the grid now. It's a really handy tool. So I'm not going to bore you with too much science, but the gist of it is our eyes are naturally drawn whenever we look at a photo to look at whatever is on those lines and whatever is at the intersection of those lines. So you can use this at your advantage. Basically, you just want to try and place things that you think are important either on the lines or at the intersections of those lines. But if we look at photos, so for example, in portraits or street photography, it really allows you to create a sense of scale and environment. Rather than just focusing on a subject, you're actually placing the subject in a situation and telling more of a story. So for example, in this shot right here, we're placing the bell, which is the focus of our photo, in its natural environment in a temple, whereas if it was right in the center of the shot, you wouldn't be able to see so much of how the bell is placed within its environment. And you're naturally drawn to it, the picture seems bigger than it is. So this trick doesn't just apply to landscape photos, it also applies to portrait photos. So if we look at photo in portrait mode, you'll notice here that I'm standing at the intersection of 2 lines on the grid. So using the lines, you're creating 3 distinct cuts in the photo. We've got the sky, we've got the water, and we've got the mountain and rocks at the bottom. And we've got me standing at the intersection of 2 grids, so everything is balanced out in this photo. And you can apply this into a bunch of scenarios, but whenever I'm taking portraits or I want to show someone in an environment, I always like to place them at the intersection of 2 lines of the grid, and that way, rather than just focusing on the subject, you're actually placing the subject in a situation and telling more of a story. Obviously, in photography, there's no real rules, and if there were, rules are meant to be broken anyway. So take this with a grain of salt. This is just a method that you can use to try and make things a little bit more balanced in your photo, but again, rules are meant to be broken, so experiment with it, but don't follow it too closely. All right, tip number 2, dirty your shot, aka get shit in the way. So this is something that's very commonly used in cinematography, and it's the art of pushing the camera through space. What does that mean? Basically, we want to recreate the sense of real life. And so what we're doing is we're putting stuff in the way. We're not clearing a path so we can take a photo of something right in front of us. We're trying to blend the photographer, the subject, all in one natural environment. And so the tip for this is just to try shooting photos through things. If we look at a couple of examples, so for this example here in the Taj Mahal, I could have stepped a little bit forward and taken a photo of my girlfriend in the mosque of the Taj Mahal. But because I've taken a bit of a step back, I've actually created a frame for this photo, a frame wherein she stands. Here's a photo I took in the Philippines of a tarsier as I was exploring the island of Bohol. Now, you could walk up and get a really close shot of these tiny little animals, but the beauty of this photo is actually to get stuff in the way and show this tarsier in his natural environment. So we've got branches, we've got leaves, we've got all sorts of stuff, and it creates a much more natural shot. It's less artificial, it's less just the subject, it's the subject in their environment. Now here's another example taken in Cambodia. Now I could have had Laura just walk along the pier and taken a photo of her, but because I've created a frame, we're now into a much more sort of foresty environment. There's something more going on. We've actually got a frame, a natural frame for this photo. We're shooting through the trees and through the branches. It creates something that's more natural and more pleasing to the eye. Same goes for this elephant. Now I've got loads of photos of elephants that are taking straight at the elephant, but I really like this one here because it's sort of the elephant staring at something and we're shooting through the leaves. So it creates more of an intimate shot, something more realistic. We're not always going to get a clear shot of our subject, and dirtying your shot or shooting through things can often make things look much more natural. Tip number 3, playing with scale. So this involves playing around with your camera a little bit. Try zooming all the way out and then zooming all the way back in, and try and frame the same shot twice. You'll notice that on one of them you're going to look really big in a small environment, and on the other one you're going to look really small in a huge environment. And so these two techniques tell two different stories. So I'm going to show you two different photos taken pretty much at the same spot. So this one right here is taken with the drone, and obviously I'm tiny in this huge environment that goes as far as the eye can see. But if we look at this second one here, notice how I'm much bigger, I'm standing much taller, and the environment seems longer and not quite as tall. So this is all playing with perspective and scale. The first one, again, is showing how tiny and insignificant I am after this huge hike in the middle of Batad in the Philippines. But the second one is more of an accomplishment. I'm standing tall, looking further away. The photos are taken at the exact same spot, but they tell a completely different story. Now this is quite similar to two photos I took in Nepal. Now this first photo here I'm going to show you, I look really small and insignificant, in front of these huge mountains. On the second photo, different angle and maybe 10-minute walk later, I'm looking much bigger, much stronger, and I actually look much higher up than I was. Now this second photo, I'm actually standing much lower than the first, but I look much higher up. So this is all a question of playing with scale, playing with size, and trying to tell a story with your photo. Now this brings me swiftly to point number 4, shoot in the moment. Now this is a bit of a difficult one to explain, but the gist of it is try and capture real situations. It's all about telling a story through your photos. More often than not, some of my best photos are photos that I took completely at random of different life situations and things going on that were just so real, so raw, as opposed to, scripted photos where you stand there, you do that, I get the angle. I believe if you spend too much time playing with the settings on your camera, you're not going to be able to get the shot. I'd rather take the shot and miss the settings than faff around with the settings for half an hour, only to realize that the moment is gone. So it's all about capturing the moment and trying to make it stand out. And this ties in really nicely with something that I believe is very important, and that's tip number 5, which is shoot more. Now, I've always found that the more I shoot photos, the better I get at editing them, and the more I edit photos, the better I get at shooting them. Now, the reason behind this is whenever you're shooting photos, you've got an idea of what it's going to look like, but as soon as you're back home editing, sometimes they turn out really good, but sometimes you think, I wish I'd shot it that way, or a different angle, or if I'd tried it a little bit lower. And there's a couple of things you can do to combat that, one of which is just to shoot as many photos as you can. I often shoot 5, 10, even 20 photos of the same thing, just to make sure I've got at least one that I know is going to be perfect. There really is nothing worse than coming home to edit your photos and realizing, I wish I'd shot it from a different angle, that doesn't quite work the way I want, or worst of all, I'm not in focus. So shoot more photos of the same thing, but also shoot more to practice. The more you practice, the more you're going to learn to edit, and the more you edit, the better you'll get at taking photos, because you'll know what type of photos you can take to achieve the look that you're going for. The rule of thumb really is you can always delete photos, but you can never recreate quite that moment. So take more photos than you think you'll need. Worst case, you'll delete them. Best case, you've got some amazing photos that you're going to be able to edit later on. And the last tip, bonus tip for this one, just don't be embarrassed. Creating is cool, man. I used to get embarrassed whenever I was out shooting, or if I'm doing a time lapse or a hyperlapse, people would look at me funny and I'd be all embarrassed and I'd try and hide behind my phone. But the truth of it is, you're creating something cool and people admire that. So you need to own up to the fact that you're creating something cool. If you're out shooting, worst case scenario, you're creating something really cool and the people that are looking at you'll never see ever again. Best case scenario, you've actually gained some new followers if you have a chat with them. So it's a win-win all around. So that's it for the tutorial, guys. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you found something useful. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you want to see next. I'm going to be making a lot more of these tutorials in the future. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm a photographer, videographer, and I teach you all the stuff that I know. So in the meantime, stay creative, guys. Take care.